I spent 6 weeks in China this summer, as this says. And when I got there, I was very jet lagged, so I don't actually remember Beijing that well because we were only there for 3 days, but I was 12 hours off. But Beijing is this crazy place. Like if you go to any city in America, there are like 12, the most is like 12 million people, I believe, in New York. But here, they just enlarged Beijing to be able to fit 130 million, which is over 10 times the size of the largest city in America. But and then we went up to the highest point in Beijing at one point, which is above the Forbidden City, which is this right here, is the Forbidden City. And you could see, for as far as you could see, in any direction, there were buildings that reached that height. Like, they couldn't go above this point that stood above the Forbidden City, but they all got to just about that height for as long as you could see in any direction. It was unlike any city that I've ever seen, which was nuts. This first few days I spent with the rest of the Americans. I was with the other 10 of them, yeah, or 11 of us, and the 3 instructors that were there. But after this, we went to this little town, La Shanghai, for 2 weeks, and stayed with those families. But the weird thing in China is that there are like hundreds and hundreds of languages throughout China that are spoken, not just Mandarin, which is the language I've been learning for the last few years. So when I stayed with this host family, I couldn't really speak to them because their native language was Nashi, which is it's the last living hieroglyphic language, which is pretty cool, but it isn't really spoken anywhere except for this tiny region in China, the Lijiang area, which is where La Shanghai is. And so because they learn Mandarin as like their second language, because everyone has to in China learn Mandarin because it's the national language. But I didn't really know Mandarin that well when I got there for these first 2 weeks, and the other people didn't really know Mandarin all the way that well. Well enough that I can understand. So most of my communication with my first host family was through like movements, just like sort of acting out what I was trying to say. But I did spend 6 hours every day in Chinese class with other students, which is how I learned. One way to learn. And after this, what is sort of sets this program, Where There Be Dragons, apart from other programs, that they have this expedition phase where you spend a week going wherever you want, not going wherever you want, but you plan a week in traveling through the province we're in. And somehow you have to make it to Kunming, which is our next spot, like where we're staying. And so our first place we went to was Shangri-La, which is one of the Buddhist, it's one of the centers of Buddhism in the world. It's pretty cool. This is actually the largest prayer wheel in the world, this one right here. Maybe you don't know what a prayer wheel is, but that's what a prayer wheel is. You walk around it, you pray, and hold this pole around it. But it was pretty, I don't know, I mean, it was really cool because the whole town was full of monasteries and monks. It was really interesting learning about that, but it was also full of tourists because it's one of the main like tourism sites in China because it's renowned worldwide for being a Buddhist sanctuary, I guess. And from there we went to one of our instructors knew people in this little town that had about 10 inhabitants, whole town, the nearer village. I don't have a picture of it because I couldn't find a picture online, but it was this really beautiful place that was just surrounded by mountains. It was just like these like 3 or 4 houses, and every day a friend of mine and I would wake up at like 5 in the morning and go for a hike on the mountain, come back down, and eat breakfast. But it was an awesome place because that was pretty much all we did for these 2 days there was like hike for that time. And as we did for the next 3 days at Tiger Looking Gorge, which is the 3rd biggest gorge in the world, bigger than the Grand Canyon. And we got to the highest point there, which is the gorge. I don't think it's in this picture, but it actually might be what picture's taken. I got it on Google, so I'm not really totally sure. I didn't have a camera, so I don't really know. There are people who had cameras, so that's how I have pictures, but I didn't put any there, so. But so Tiger Looking Gorge is a really cool place. It was a full day hike that we stayed at a hostel at the top, so that's where, I mean, we couldn't make it through the whole thing in one day, so we stayed there, and we went to this place, which is really cool. And from there, we made our, one of our last stops in Kunming, which was where we stayed for another 2 weeks with another host family. And I had a great experience with this host family, much better than my first experience. My first experience was hard because I really couldn't understand anything they said, and they couldn't understand anything I said. But in this city, they spoke very traditional Mandarin, so it was easier. So their accents were more they put more emphasis on their tones. So each word was like more clear. I don't know if any of you have ever spoken any Mandarin, but it's really hard to understand when you can't hear each word and each tone on the words. But in the Kunming like accent, it's very much the way any student would learn in America, which was really great. So I became really good friends with my host family there. The father was he was a calligrapher. He taught calligraphy at school. But his main profession was making art, like fans, which I have 2 of at my house, because I could have brought in, but didn't. That have these beautiful characters on them and paintings in the back of stuff like flowers. One of the ones I have it has the Mayflower flower, which is like literally means just beautiful flower, and it looks sort of like an apple blossom. And on the front it says Zhong Fan, I think, which means long luck, which essentially means long, like I wish you good luck for a very long time, like lifelong luck kind of thing. So that was really cool. My host mother was she used to be a stay-at-home mother. Now but before that she was also a teacher, but now she's retired, and her daughter is in England studying and working. She's 23, and yeah, so that was really cool. I would do stuff like play tennis with them and they would take me to all the sites in Kunming. And Kunming, what's also really interesting about Kunming is that it's one of the fastest growing cities in China. So 10 years ago, it had about 3 million people in it. And this year, when I went there, it had 8 million, and almost the entire city was in construction because it was just being built up. Because cities like Beijing and Hong Kong, and well, Hong Kong not really in China, but Shanghai, they're all like essentially full because they've been built up for the past 50 years. So cities like Kunming are being built up very fast right now because China is still one of the fastest, after India, the fastest growing population in the world. So they need space to hold everyone. So they're putting people in places like Kunming, which now has 8 million people after having 3 million 10 years ago, which is crazy. And that was really essentially what I did in China. If any of you have any questions about what I did, I'd be interested to answer. Alex?
How was the food?
The food in
Wow. I'm curious.
The food in China's Kunming was awesome actually, but it was really spicy, but it was really good. But in this place, High, it was very sort of gross. One of the things they said that they had one night was, well actually a few nights, was raw pork fat, which is kind of, I didn't eat it, but I think almost everyone on the trip got diarrhea at one point in the trip. I had it for about a week when here, where pretty much everything I touched turned to feces. But yeah, so I don't know, here the food wasn't great. They were all essentially subsistence farmers. The whole town had one huge rice farm, which I worked on with my host mother one day. Actually, no, 3 days. I worked on it with my host mother. And so pretty much every family would contribute this rice farm and sold it to the government, and was paid by the government, which is somewhat how communism works usually, which is what China is. That most of the companies and or the food is funded by the government. And they also had pigs and chickens of their own, which they would eat themselves. So what they did most years was they would kill one of their pigs and get one, and that pig would feed them their meat for the whole next year, and that was how they lived. And any more questions? Alex?
Would you go back?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't really know any Chinese when I first. I mean, I've been learning for the last 2 years, so I thought that I'd know some Chinese. That I'd know a lot of Chinese, but I did not. I was wrong. I guess I had tried to speak it, and it had been hard before, but it was much harder once I got there. But just knowing that I could learn it, because by the end of the trip I was having full conversations in Mandarin, and just that thought. I mean, just the idea that I could be in this totally foreign country and speaking to people was just a totally cool idea to me. So I think I want to go back there in college and stay for a semester, but not in college yet, so I don't know.
How much of Mandarin do you know exactly?
I'm not for sure quite how to quantify that, but I guess I can have a full conversation about most things. But I'm definitely not fluent. Not in any way. I can't read it as well as I can speak it, but because most of the way I learned here was just by speaking in my host families. That's sort of the best way to learn how to speak a language. But the difference between Mandarin and most languages for us in America is that it's not alphabetical. So you have to learn each character, how to read it and speak it to really know the language. So as much as I can speak it, I don't know the characters for many of the words I learned in China. So I'm definitely not fluent. I can have a lot of conversations. Sean?
What was your favorite part of the trip?
Well, the easiest part. Well, I don't know. The easiest part for me was hiking this gorge. I love hiking. It's one of my favorite things to do in the world. But I wouldn't say it was my favorite because it wasn't really what I came there for. I came there to really be like involved in the culture and the language itself. So definitely my favorite part was in canoeing because I had an awesome relationship with my host family. I learned a lot of Mandarin there. Evelyn?
If you could go back to any one of these places, where would you go back to?
I don't think I would. If any of these places, I would just go back to Kunming. But I don't think I want to go back to Kunming first. I think I want to visit more of China. So probably Shanghai. I want to visit Hong Kong too, but Hong Kong doesn't actually speak Mandarin. It speaks Cantonese because they work under the two governments, one country clause. So really, they don't have to follow the laws of China as long as they are financially beneficial to China. So everything they make goes to the Chinese government, but they're not actually part of China really. They just it's really Hong Kong is another country, has its own government, and the people speak a different language. But in the year 2047, they will actually join China, which is something that one of the dictators, one of the leaders of Hong Kong, sort of screwed everyone in Hong Kong over with. In 1997, when Hong Kong was free from Britain, their dictator just went and signed an agreement with China without the consent of any of the public that they would fully join China in 2047 after 50 years. So people in Hong Kong are still protesting that. If you heard the umbrella protests, they happened, I think, 2 years ago. Do you know?
Yeah, no.
Do they want to join or do they not want to join?
They don't want to join China because the thing about China is that it's a very oppressive government. They really don't let you have thoughts of your own. Really, if you're and they really don't let you leave either. Like when I was in China, a lot of people would try to become friends because you really can't get out of China unless you really know someone outside of China. So there's sort of this mentality in China that you have to you have to find people from other countries because you can't. I don't know. You can't do anything outside of there otherwise. You can't sort of leave this government-funded area.
So you were there when they were probably making the decision on the government making the decision on how many children.
No, I wasn't. But they do now have.
That was pretty recent.
Now it's that was only a few weeks ago. But
yeah. Okay.
I was there a few months ago. But that was the two-child policy. Now it's the two-child policy instead of one-child policy. As much as it's oppressive to the people to make them have one child, it's sort of a cool idea. I mean, except for the fact that because of that, there are girls who are just thrown away in dumpsters now, which is awful, just terrible. But I mean, the idea that it does hold back one of like this country that already has over 1 billion people, is I don't know, I think there needs to be something stopping the population growth. Just because we're already supposedly over 1 billion people, we already have more than 1 billion people, more than what the Earth can supposedly sustain for a year. So I don't know. I mean, there are benefits to it, but also the problem with the one-child policy was that it only works for the majority groups in China. So anyone in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, Tibet, Taiwan, any of those areas, they don't. I mean, actually, Taiwan's actually definitely not. Taiwan is totally different. I'm sorry. I mean, Taiwan is not part of China at all right now.
They don't.
But they don't. They don't have to. They have to follow that law. And even made the groups in the rest of China, like where I was in here, the Nazi people of the Lijiang area, they don't have to follow the law either because they're minority people. But most of the people in China are a minority. Like the majority is only like 40% of the population, I
Would you
believe.
say it's more of an urban rule, or is it?
It is more. Yeah, it's more of an urban.
about the.
It's more of an urban
So
law.
how did you get a sense of how people feel about those? Because they just recently did a thing on NPR, National Public Radio, about interviewing people from China and how they felt about not only that decision that went on for a long time about only one child and girls were not, it wasn't good to have a girl. Now apparently they're realizing that their family, the ability to, it's weird because they do have an increasing population, but their ability to actually repopulate has diminished because of that policy. So that's what my understanding was, that they reinstated that two-child. So I wonder how people in China feel about that.
Yeah, no, I talked to people with it about it, but my
You don't wanna talk about it?
I did talk about it, but it's very touchy.
Yeah.
Like my instructor, who is Chinese, she was from Kunming actually. She had been to America, so she was probably more of the less nationalistic pride, less about nationalistic pride than most. She hated it. She was also a woman, so she felt threatened by it because most women get the butt end of this deal because they're just thrown. A lot of them are just thrown out. So she hated it, but most people, they are. China's really good at brainwashing their children.
Did you feel like people felt like it was dangerous to talk about it, or just
people just didn't talk? They didn't talk about it. If you asked them about it, they didn't want it. I mean, they wouldn't. Not so much that they wouldn't talk about it, but they would just support it because the government is very intense there. What I thought was interesting is that essentially Taiwan and does anyone know about what goes on in Taiwan and China and how Taiwan, it's a different country right now, but China is constantly trying to turn it into to make it part of China. And it probably will be because they're just such a less powerful nation. They don't have the financial power or the militaristic power to hold back the Chinese.
what they did with Tibet.
What?
What they did with Tibet, sort of, although Tibet.
Well, Tibet's a totally different deal because it also brings in Buddhism to the equation because Tibet's the only Buddhist state in the entire world. And now they're trying to sort of bring Tibet in by letting the Chinese government name the next Dalai Lama, which would sort of ruin Tibet. And so now the Buddhist leaders are saying that they're not going to have another Dalai Lama after this person dies. Because if they did, then he would probably be a pro-unification of China Dalai Lama, and Dalai Lama controls Tibet. But yeah, Taiwan.
Anyway,
I can't remember what I was saying
Taiwan,
I can't remember what I was saying about Taiwan, but that is not that important. Yeah. Oh, but I remember. Pretty much everyone in China and everyone in Taiwan disagree about on almost everything. The only one thing that they agree on is this leader Sun Yat-sen, who ended the Qing dynasty in 1911, I believe. So everyone is in favor of him, but he also sort of was one of the reasons that he found the PRC. The PRC is the current party, but I can't remember what the party he founded was. And it turned into Chiang Kai-shek's party, who then founded the Taiwan. So everyone in China hates Chiang Kai-shek, who took over for Sun Yat-sen. Everyone in China and everyone in Taiwan loves Sun Yat-sen because but for different reasons. In Taiwan because he started their party in China because they ended the corrupt era of the Qing.
Gave them more of an independence?
Yeah, they did. That's,
Just to change the subject a bit, how do the cities that you visited in China compare to, say, US cities? So did you see like differences in like the rich, were there slums, were there homeless? Were there nightlife, any of those differences that you noticed or similarities?
there are more karaoke bars.
Say that?
There are more karaoke bars in China. But I don't know, they were bigger. There are more than, I think there are 6 cities that are big, and in China that are bigger than LA, which is the most populated city in America. Which is probably four times as many people. But I don't visit the city that much here either, but I did get the feeling that there wasn't quite as big of a gap between the rich and the poor. Maybe that's that's the best part of communism, that it doesn't allow for people to get overly rich or overly poor because the people are funded by the state. But that was really all I noticed in the differences. That was positive, but that's still essentially in my mind, right? Because communism sort of leads to a totalitarian government. The only benefit is that it makes people more equal. But the bad part is that everyone is sort of suppressed as people. But yeah, but I don't know. That's what I saw the difference between
Did
the
people
cities.
dress differently? Did you notice if there was any like?
In Beijing, they're dressed all the same. But I don't know. It's essentially Western dress now. But in the cities, in the village here, it was totally different. It was all a very, very traditional Chinese garb, which is like one large cloth that you wore yourself, and she was almost always wearing her farming gear because that's what they did every day. But yes.
Did you meet any people there that spoke English?
Yeah, I met my instructor who's from Kunming spoke pretty good English. I played tennis with this guy who was from Kunming. He was on the amateur tour for golf in all over the world, but he spent his college years at UCLA studying, mostly playing golf. But he spoke fluent English, and that was pretty cool.
Where was he from originally?
Kunming. But yeah, he was an awesome athlete also. But I don't know, he was a.
Did he say that when he started playing golf, like at what age he got into it?
No, he didn't. But I was a little bit shocked about golf because I didn't know. I mean, I didn't see a single golf course in China. He told me that.
Yeah, well, they're not really allowed to have golf courses in most of China. There was just.
Because they use it for too much space.
Yeah, and they see it as indulgent, I think, in a way, which is kind of interesting. But there was one place I heard of recently where they were actually trying to make a golf course at like a resort kind of area, and they were going. I think they were going to go through with it, but that's why I asked, because it's like, wow, golf in China is just not like he had to really, really want to play golf to be able to.
Well, he said he told me that the place that he played was this military base that had a golf course. Somehow, I mean, doesn't
An
seem
American
toys.
military base?
No, a Chinese military base.
Oh, okay.
That in China that outside of Kunming. But he invited me to come, but I didn't meet him until last week. I was in Kunming, so I didn't get to play. But
Oliver, on a typical day, like you, just asking about English, like how much English did you speak, like on a typical day? Were you pretty much speaking Mandarin all day?
no, not all day. But on the weekends I only spoke Mandarin because I didn't have Chinese class. But when I was in class, that was when we. I guess I spoke about 50-50 when on a typical day. Because I had 6 hours of class every day, and you can't only. I mean, even though you should be, in my opinion, only speaking Mandarin while you're learning, we weren't quite at that level, so we couldn't quite do that and learn as efficiently.
Were people at all different levels in the class, the students?
Well, we split in different classes. I was in I was in the intermediate class, but there was the top class was all students who want to take AP Chinese this year. I'm not quite there yet because AP Chinese is essentially like it's meant for the international students in America and high schools. just like the AP German or AP Spanish, except they're a little bit different because, I mean, people who can speak Spanish a little more fluently by this point than Mandarin usually. But it's essentially like taking the AP English composition test for us. It's the same thing except in Mandarin.
So if you're in 6 hours of class a day, what do those classes look like? What's the structure of the class? I mean, are you just pretty much sitting and doing stuff, or did they have different activities?
It was sitting and doing, but we took 10 minute breaks after every hour. But the classes were small, so you got all the space to talk. It was like 3 people or 4 people per class.
Did you enjoy the classes? Be honest.
I don't know. I didn't really enjoy
that's
the
a long-
class so much.
6 hours a day is a
Long
long
time.
time.
6 hours is a long
Immersed
time.
in one thing.
But-
I mean, imagine you guys if you took Spanish all day long.
That's like the whole school day.
Can't stay for an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's all you're doing is Mandarin.
I mean, I appreciate it for what it was, because like I love to learn the Mandarin, but
Do you
6 hours is a long
think
time.
you learned more Chinese just speaking out and about than you did in your actual class? And were you focused more on learning characters in the class, or can you quantify it or not? Maybe not.
I guess it was about the same amount in both, because I don't think I could have learned the same. I think I learned more outside of the class, but I don't think I could have learned the way I learned outside the class without what I learned inside the class.
Uh-huh.
But
So how many weeks were you there in China?
6. 1 week.
So it was a 6-week intensive.
Yeah, so 1 week we didn't learn any language. We didn't study any language because we were traveling and it was mostly a hiking phase. Although we did have days when we would try to only speak Mandarin. And then we were here for 2 weeks, here for half a week, 2 weeks, and then we spent the last half of the week on our essentially our it was supposed to be our departation kind of thing. And we went to a monastery outside of Kunming that had a bunch of monkeys at it, which was really cool. Yeah, but yeah, it was the first time I've seen
When you were
monkeys in
doing the
person.
hiking at what's the Buddhist,
Oh, we didn't do
at
hiking here.
Shangri-La?
That was, I don't know, we couldn't, it was like 50-50 in the group. Half of us loved hiking and half of us hated hiking. So when we organized our expedition phase, and within our whole group, no one except for 3 or 4 of us wanted to do all hiking.
Were any of the monks hiking with you at all? Did they have a
No.
habit of going out and
There
doing
were
long
monks
treks and stuff? Or?
We didn't, we didn't hike with any monks, because we didn't hike when we were here. But we did play, when we were in High in the first place, we biked to this monastery and played soccer with them, with the monk team.
Are they good?
We lost, but well, they weren't as good as we thought they'd be, because none of us actually really played soccer. And we
So
all,
when they play soccer, do they play in their roads, or what do they have? What are they playing?
no, they had jerseys, because but the thing about monasteries is that most monks are just children that were abandoned, and then the monasteries adopt them. So they don't really have parents. Their parents are the monks, but it's not one particular monk. The monastery itself adopts these children, and they have the option of becoming monks. But because it's all they've ever known since they're abandoned, that's usually what they do. They usually become monks. But essentially just any other person who was just practicing Buddhism, like any of us here who are studying Christianity.
Do we have a question? You guys have any questions?
I was wondering where you went for the classes.
To
When you
to-
took the 6-hour class, where would they be held?
There'd be in a program house that was sort of in the middle of all. In High, everyone was 5 minutes away. We just walked to class. In Kunming, everyone had to take a bus there. All of us got lost at least once. I was trying to make it to an ultimate frisbee game on my own, and I couldn't figure out how to get there because the bus system had just gotten changed a month before. So I borrowed someone's phone to check where it was, and they told me that one bus was left from one point, and it wasn't actually there. And then I got lost in Kunming, and that was one of the best experiences, sort of, because I had to actually see if I could use the language to find my way home. I didn't actually do that ultimate frisbee game because I took about an hour to get home, but that's yeah.
What made you decide to take Chinese to begin with? How did you learn it before you went to China?
Well, I did it the same way Timmy Roberts and Dylan Brockmeyer and Jack Roberts did it. And Zach Breathick is not doing it the same way, but he did because I did it. But it's this program at Johns Hopkins, CTY program. you have to apply for it, and if you get in, you can take language classes there every semester, including summer. I don't take the summer classes, but and so I took it for 2 years, 4 classes, and it's accredited, so I can count it for language credits in school. And so yeah, that's how I do it. But I decided to do it because it's the fastest growing language in the world, and it's pretty useful. I mean, for an American English speaker, for an American Chinese speaker, you can get a job in China very easily. So I think that's one of the things I really been thinking of doing after college, going to visit, living in China and teaching English to Chinese students for a few years. It's very well paid, and it's very easy to get a job like that in China. But because everyone's trying to learn English because they want to sort of get out.
Are there other jobs you can do besides just?
No, there are plenty
teaching?
of jobs. I just don't know. I'm just not sure what they are.
Interpreter, news.
Yeah.
I have a
But
friend,
have you ever
most-
been
I
in
have a
most-
friend who works for Reuters.
As an American, most of them are going to be English. Are going to be language jobs, but
Have you ever been in Mr. Vandel's class? He's like a huge advocate for China in terms of multinational, just in terms of the cutting edge sort of where China's gonna be on a global stage and economically and financially. So he's always talking about, and he's got a friend over there, I guess. He's always
yeah,
talking
he has a friend
You
in Hong
gotta learn
Kong.
Chinese, otherwise you're just not gonna make it ever. It's like, well, I don't know about that, it's kind of extreme, but it's interesting, his take, like, he talks about it a lot, so much and stuff.
He has a friend in Hong Kong and a friend in Japan, so that's his connection.
Yeah.
But well, I think his friend moved from Hong Kong to Japan.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, but that's his connection. I know he does think that way, that any person going into business has to learn Chinese. Which is sort of true. It's business. I mean, English is a business language of the world, but Chinese is very important too.
Yeah, it's on the rise, for sure. Yeah, well, they're going through a whole industrialization period, just like we did. Like you're saying, that city being built, like, as we speak.
130 million people. It's
That
crazy. It
increase
blows
in
my mind.
population is insane. If you look back to the industrial era of our country, that's what happened. Like, there were 2 million people, and then there were 9 million, I don't know if I'm not getting the numbers right, but it went from like this huge jump within a very short period of time, which causes a lot of problems in terms of pollution and, you name it, but it's really interesting. But I think China right now, you might have gotten the sense that they really want to be able to have their industrial era so they can move through it and.
Well, the thing in China is that it's
stage.
for that it's mostly that China's trying to catch up because most of the industrialization for the past 15 years, or 20 years, has been from Hong Kong. 30% of all the money made in China comes from Hong Kong, this tiny little island. It's not really even part of China, which is why they want to be free from China, because they're supporting China essentially, but not getting the benefits of actually being funded by the country. So they're I don't know. It sort of seems as though they're taking advantage of Hong Kong, in my opinion. But I wouldn't say that to make Chinese people.
The Chinese government,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can you teach us a little bit of Chinese?
Okay. If you want to say I can speak Mandarin, it's 我会说中文. 我 no, no, you're good. 会说中文. Yeah, exactly.
That's I can speak.
That's I am able to speak Chinese.
That's a good first thing to learn.
That's hard.
And then what? You can't.
Can you say hi?
What?
Can you say hi?
It's I don't know. They have a really. It's sort of weird when you're on the phone. You say hello. It's way. But when you're just sort of you say like hi, what's up is essentially how they say it, which is ni hao, which means you good.
Isn't it like really easy to? I heard that in speaking Chinese, if your inflection,
Yeah.
like the
It's a tonal
sound
language.
is
Can
the same,
change the meaning.
but you can really get into trouble. Like if you say something
Yeah.
the same thing in a different way, you can say it has a completely different meaning.
Well, for instance, I'll give you an example. I mean, it's a tonal language, so everything the words are defined by the way you say them, not just by how they sound, phonetically, but how you say them. So like ma, and ma are 3 different words that all sound the same, and they mean horse, mother, and the other one is just a question. Is like you say it in a sentence to make a question.
So you could call someone's mother a horse.
Yes, you could very easily.
Mistake.
And the characters also look very similar. Just horse is a little bit more simple.
I can see how that could go south real quick.
Yeah, it does. They were,
I wonder why historically, like, ma became that word that was both horse and mother.
well, I'd love to show you the characters if I could, but, they're almost the same. It's just that one has this little ko, which is like this little box on the side of it, and that's how you make, the word, mother, and that's why you make horse into mother. Horse is actually more simple than mother, but, yeah.
So mother has the little box and the.
Yeah, mother has
The
a
extra
little box.
piece to it.
What?
That mother has the extra piece to it, and
Yeah.
horse is more.
And the question word has, instead of, oh wait, no, I'm sorry, mother has, the character has the radical nu, next to it, which means woman. So I guess it sort of means female horse, but which is, mother, sort of bad, but, and the word for, to make a question has the ko, the box next to it. That's the only difference. Yeah.
Was it hard for you to learn, or kind of just like, did you ever take like Spanish or like language like that?
I've taken a lot of languages. I took French for a few years. I took Spanish in elementary and middle school. Not middle school, 7th grade I took French. And then I went to Italy for a summer a few years ago, and I learned. And I thought I was gonna take Italian, but then Italian wasn't offered online as an accredited course. So I still had to take. I either had to drop all languages, or not, or take a language in school also. So I decided that Italian didn't really make sense for high school, and I went to Chinese instead. But there are parts that I regret because Italian's much easier. I could have been speaking it now.
It's really interesting, those immersion programs, because I went to a 9-week program at Middlebury College, but I went for Russian language when I was in college. And it was great, but it was very much immersion, and our Russian teachers were all women, sort of elderly women. They were very strict. And you couldn't even go down to like the corner store and get a newspaper. You had to speak Russian, and they would actually send out spies, like older students, graduate students, who would make sure that you were speaking Russian, and then they'd report back. And then the next campus over was the Italian immersion program, and you would hear them like late into the night, like going, woo, partying and having a great time. And I remember going like, what am I doing in the Russian program? Like, am I really gonna use Russian? I should be taking Italian right now, which I actually still regret to this day that I didn't do like an Italian, if you're gonna spend that kind of money on a program like that, you know. Anyway, it was just really funny how different the different cultures were creating their own little environment, community within just an American school, Middlebury, you know.
One of my instructors in China actually taught for that program, except the Chinese version of that
Yeah,
program.
the Chinese, in Middlebury.
Because they do year programs like that are longer, but they also do summer programs that for 3 or 4 weeks. He taught in
Yeah.
that.
We got time for 1 or 2 more questions, guys. Anybody else questions?
Evelyn?
How do you say goodbye in Chinese?
Goodbye.
Or I hate you?
I can't remember. I found it. It's Zaijian, or, well, I mean, it depends on what you're trying to say. If you're gonna see them soon, then you'll say like, Zuotian, like, see you tomorrow. I mean, Zai, Mintian means see you tomorrow. Zai Zuotian means see you yesterday, which doesn't make sense. And Zaijian is see you again.
How was the travel?
Travel, it was hard. It was 24 hours of travel.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you all.
Yeah, that's all.